Thank you so much for joining us today for the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. Here on the Pastor's Potluck, it's similar to a normal potluck where you might get something that you want and there may be something that you just want to pass up altogether. And that's okay. There's something here for everybody. Our goal here is to encourage you and maybe in the process entertain you. If you're ready, let's dig in. Welcome to another episode of the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. We were just talking about sandwiches a little bit before this and just how ridiculous it is to buy a sandwich.
Subway thinks a lot of their sandwiches given their prices.
Yeah.
But I did thoroughly enjoy it. So
yes. What's your go-to sandwich at
Well, I
Subway?
got a new one last night, and this has been like a transformation through the years. So as a kid, I started off straight pizza sub.
Yeah.
It was like pepperoni and cheese.
Yeah.
Then I went to the meatball sub. Then in high school was when they came out with the chicken bacon ranch.
Oh, that's an amazing
And
sandwich.
that was just my thing. Right before baseball games,
Yeah.
I'd always drive to the Subway in Nitro, and it was always chicken bacon ranch. And as of late, I really have liked the steak and cheese.
Yeah.
No veggies, nothing like that. Just steak, cheese.
Well, I could have.
Yeah. Well, some of the sandwiches I do like to add like lettuce and pickles and banana peppers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the steak one, I just want the steak and cheese. But then I like their the Baja Chipotle sauce.
Yeah.
Just that.
You don't get bell peppers on that one? It seems
Nope.
to make it almost kind of like Philly cheesesteak style.
And then last night I was looking at because their whole menu is all new now because it's the preferred menu.
Yeah.
So they're all sandwiches that professional athletes like.
Yeah.
And I got one last night, and I cannot remember. I think it was called the Beast, something like that. It was the steak, but it had bacon on it as well. Peppercorn ranch and chipotle sauce.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
I think the only sandwich that I'd get from Subway that doesn't have any veggies on it is the meatball because the meatballs are already awkwardly shaped.
Yeah, you can't do veggies on meatballs sandwich.
You just have to you just know that you're gonna have a cinder block in your stomach for the next couple of hours.
And I will go get the meatball just because it's the cheapest sub there now.
Yeah.
And it's fire. It's good.
I like to put the red wine vinegar on it. It gives
On the meatball?
it gives it like a little bit of acidity.
I don't like anything with red wine flavoring in it for some reason.
That's the thing. It doesn't. You don't taste that flavor. It just kind of gives it like that pickly flavor to it.
Okay.
I don't know.
But I do. Italian herbs and cheese still slaps. So.
Yeah, and the chicken bacon ranch.
It's really good.
Yeah, that one was a good combination. Whenever I first heard of it, I was like, that's not going to be good. But it's chicken and it's bacon and it's ranch.
Yeah, and I would add the chipotle sauce to that as well.
Oh yeah.
And oh man, that's the one I will put like some lettuce, banana peppers, pickles.
Yeah.
Some days if I'm feeling froggy enough, some jalapeno.
Yeah.
But I don't intentionally do that anymore. Like I used to put jalapenos on stuff.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, nah. I mean, I like the flavor, but also I don't like my mouth to be hot. So.
Yeah, I like spicy things, but I just want to be able to just, hi, I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't want to make you miserable. Like,
I had
because
something
people that
spicy.
eat, like my son, this past Sunday, they brought that one chip challenge here.
That's ignorant.
That's-
I saw all them kids doing that.
Yeah.
I went in the bathroom in between services.
Yeah.
There was 6 teenager boys huddled around the sink, all like lapping water up onto their face. Like, what? Like, what is this world?
I know.
that
Their
you put
eyes
out
are all
videos?
swollen. Their lips were all swollen and puffy and red. Their cheeks are flush. They're all miserable, like thinking, like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And Luke is in there, my second oldest son. He's in there, and he's watching. He's laughing, having a good time. Yesterday, he goes, man, I can't wait to try that one-chip challenge. I said, bro, I'm going to teach you something in life.
Yeah.
Whenever you see somebody else that does something that's, like, miserable and they absolutely regret it, learn from other people's mistakes to where you know that this is something that I don't want to do.
Yeah, one of the teenagers was literally standing out in the lobby with an ice cube, just like this, out in our lobby, just like rubbing it all over their lips.
Yeah.
And they just looked miserable. I'm like, yeah, my days of that are over.
Yeah.
Like, I can handle spicy stuff, but I no longer, like, truth be told, I never had anything to prove.
Yeah.
But, like, when you're young and stupid, you feel like you do.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm going to eat the atomic wing challenge.
Yeah.
I just, no, I don't do any of that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I could eat that chip.
Yeah.
But why?
Dude, I don't even want to pay for it. They're
$15 for one chip. It comes in a coffin.
Yeah.
I'm not eating anything in a coffin.
I mean,
that's
forgot about
absurd.
the packaging.
It comes in a coffin.
Yeah.
And so, like, seriously, they put this thing out on TikTok, I guess. And
Well, it's been all over. It's made Facebook, TikTok, Instagram,
I
YouTube,
just don't.
all the shorts, all the reels. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, one chip.
And them dudes are making a
$15.
killing.
I'll tell you what I could get for $15. The Cajun chicken pasta at Red Line Diner.
Yeah.
And that's a better use of $15 all day.
That fills up 2/3 of my gas tank.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's $15.
And it's like, it's to be miserable.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they filmed any of it.
No, it was just it's youth
kids,
group
yeah.
shenanigans, you know.
It's
It's-
drinking a soda through a sock or something.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I'll give it to you this way. I would rather them eat spicy chip challenges and they just have fun while they're at church and they're doing all this stuff than be doing
Yeah, rather
The
than being
things
on
that
the
I
back
was
of the
doing.
parking lot vaping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna open up this gas tank and just huff away, and we're like,
Yeah.
no, just eat the spicy chips,
Yeah, just
please.
eat the spicy chip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're going to continue our discussion in Judges. Last time where we left off was Gideon and his story. And I kind of want to just kind of go over a couple of things. We're going to be talking about Abimelech and this pretty interesting story that's found in Judges. I think it starts in 10, goes through 11. And but I want to just to make just a couple of statements just to kind of get our minds thinking in this kind of order. So, whenever you hear these names, tell me what you think of. And some of them are going to be fiction, some are going to be nonfiction characters and real life people. Emperor Palpatine, Lex Luthor.
Emperor Palpatine. Just hold on. That's Star Wars, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Lex Luthor. That's the bad guy from Superman.
See, you are choosing things that are outside of my.
Oh, yeah, I'm about to give you two real life characters.
Because when you first said Lex Luthor, I thought you said Lex Luger because I was big into WCW. In
Oh
the
yeah,
90s.
back in the day. That dude's saved, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Put you on the torture rack. All right, Lex Luthor.
Yeah, he's in a
Different
wheelchair
guy.
though.
What?
Yeah, he's in a wheelchair, dude.
Oh my goodness gracious.
After he got arrested for all the pills and stuff whenever Miss Elizabeth died, Randy Savage's ex-wife.
Oh yeah.
He found Jesus but through all the wrestling and stuff like that, he's partially paralyzed, I think from a stroke or something.
Oh my god.
But he's in a wheelchair and he got saved and he tells people about Jesus now. Pretty interesting. Anyways, so Emperor Palpatine, Lex Luthor, Al Capone, Adolf Hitler. What do all these guys have in common?
They're bad guys.
They're pretty terrible people. Pretty terrible people. And you think of evil and cruelty and just they're just bad guys.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of who they are and who they were created. And in the Bible, we see a lot of stories of bad people. And I'm not talking about the people that are just they're good and they're just struggling with weakness. These are terrible people.
Yeah.
Terrible people. And so we know that Abimelech falls in this category. He's a terrible person.
Yeah.
And as we get to know him a little bit, we're gonna see this. We're gonna see it's not just a regular person that just struggles, because we know with David, he was a good guy. He just struggled with some things. We know with Moses, he was a great guy. He just struggled with some things.
Yeah.
And they were always in the pursuit of doing good things, but Abimelech was not. He was only looking out for himself.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. This story is like when I preached to Judges, I actually didn't go through Abimelech.
Yeah.
But I studied it this morning, and it's such a it's such a weird thing for us because, like, in our modern sensibilities, this is like a really awful thing that takes place.
Yeah.
And yet, in like an ancient, as far as like an ancient way of doing things, it's like super normal,
Culturally.
which is weird. Which is funny because everyone's like, "Oh, how bad the world has gotten."
No,
And you
it's
go
been
like,
bad.
"Yeah," I'm like, "No, like, listen, when we elect a new president, they don't go kill the person who lost or anyone that may challenge them. They don't go kill their whole family."
Yeah.
Like, it's funny to me. Like, I love when people like act as if like the world has gone to hell in a handbasket, and it's like, do you know anything about history, like,
Yeah.
at all?
It's
Like,
it's
what?
always been
I'm
that
not saying
figure of
it's
speech.
that. I'm not saying that like, oh, we live in a utopia now. I'm saying,
Yeah.
but it's like, so the story of Abimelech, he wants to become king, and the normal thing of maybe not maybe not everyone did this, but he went and killed all 70 of his half brother, or 69 of out of 70 of his half brothers, because
Yeah.
they were the ones that could lay claim to the throne, which is what a lot of people did in that day. Like, you
Yeah.
would kill your political enemies so the way they couldn't rise to power. In fact, we see it a lot in elsewhere in the Bible. Like, as you go through the Kings and Chronicles and things like that,
Yeah.
people were doing this. And you kind of see why, though, like, because like you mentioned, David has a story where his son Absalom like tries to overtake him.
Yeah.
Because like when you were a king in the ancient world, your throne was never like safe.
No.
I mean, just ask Julius Caesar,
Ask Ehud.
right? Like, he didn't know it was bring your knife to work day.
Yeah.
Like, like he didn't know, like it was
Yeah.
like all these people, like everyone was always vying for power, and the way that you could go get power was to just kill your political enemies.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like, but to kill 69 out of 70 of, well, first off, let's go back. Like, again, the Bible is not always a book of role models.
Yeah.
Because my first question, why did Gideon have 70 children?
Yeah,
Like,
that's what I was going to point out. Like Gideon
why?
still had his faults too, even
Yeah.
though he was appointed judge over Israel and
Yeah.
led them for a long time and gave them, led them through tremendous and awesome victories, and some pretty insurmountable odds
Yeah.
with the selection of the 300, like we talked about last time. And God still gave him victory, but he still struggled. He
Yeah.
had 70 kids with many wives,
Why?
and Abimelech was a son of a prostitute.
Yeah. Like 70. We have 5 between the two of us.
That's plenty.
My 2 are more than enough. More than enough.
Yeah.
If I were to say, "Oh, I've got your 3 plus my 2,"
Yeah.
I don't know what was he doing with 70 children?
Yeah.
And that's only the boys. There's no doubt he had girls as well. I mean, that is craziness.
Yeah.
But it also, like, it's a reminder that, because some people just don't understand this about the Bible. Most of it is because they don't actually read it.
Yeah.
They just like comment on it from outside of it. The Bible is not just a book of role models. Like, the people in the Bible outside of Jesus did not have it all together.
Yeah.
Even the people that God used really great in great ways did not have it all together.
Yeah.
And that is like one of the most encouraging things for me, yet puzzling at the same time, because I think this about myself all the time. I go, I don't know how God could possibly use someone that has done what I've done or even does what I do on some days,
Yeah.
right? And yet he does, and we forget that this is the story like Gideon throughout his whole journey. Like, he really starts off like as a scaredy cat, like we talked about in those episodes, and like he never really hit his full stride because he always had something it was like, oh man, come on, Gideon, what are you doing, bro?
Yeah.
And then like we jump to the next chapter, and it's like, oh, he had 70 sons, and you can tell like what an impact Gideon had on his child when you see how Abimelech turns out. You're like, oh my goodness gracious,
Yeah.
you're a disaster.
Yeah. One of the crazy things about this story too is that Gideon almost kind of like sets up like Israel for success.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever they like at the end of his story, they're like, "Hey, we're going to give you a crown. You're going to be king over Israel." And he goes, "No, no, 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 no. Wait. He goes, "I don't want this.
Yeah.
I don't want this for my kids. I don't want them to be ruler over Israel. I don't want to be ruler over Israel. I want the Lord to be over
Yeah.
Israel." And what happens next is that Abimelech just gets power hungry.
Yeah.
He, like you mentioned, he hires a band of thugs,
Yeah.
brings all of his brothers out to the town square, kills them in front of everybody on the same stone, and one of the brothers, Jotham, is he escapes. He sees everything that's going on. He's like, I don't want to be a part of this. He gets out of town, and he's up on like a mountainside later, and like he starts to, they call it his lament, I guess. And he starts basically just prophesying of like what's going to happen, all these bad things. He rebuked Abimelech, and basically to paraphrase like this parable that he's going through, it just says if Abimelech would be a good king serving the people and not himself, then this could work out. But if he would not serve his people but would do evil, everything would fall apart. Abimelech and the people would destroy each other.
Yeah.
And that's what we see play out.
Yeah.
Abimelech is in charge for 3 years. After he kills his brothers and everything, just craziness ensues. And he's fighting. They're always going to war. And so Abimelech and Shechem, a war between them two broke out, with Abimelech firmly winning and getting the upper hand. And so we see these things like, you're like, man, why is the like an evil person like succeeding?
Yeah.
Like, where do I see God in all of this?
Yeah.
Where, like, I just don't understand, like, God, why God would allow something like this to happen.
Yeah.
But we have to understand, like, or what we see also continually is like he's the bad guy, and bad guys aren't supposed to win.
Yeah.
Like, why is this playing out the way that it does? Why is God allowing all these terrible things that Abimelech is doing to play out?
Yeah, and this is the weird part about the sovereignty of God that is sometimes beyond our human understanding, which is why so many finite humans question an infinite God, is because it comes down to questions like this about God's sovereignty. Because as we look at the whole story, you realize that God was allowing Abimelech momentary victories, but it was ultimately going to put him in a place for him to receive the judgment that was actually due to him.
Yeah.
Right? So he's winning these victories over other like messed up people, and then God is using that somehow in his sovereignty to draw Abimelech to this point where he is now trying to burn down the Tower of Shechem, and a lady drops a stone on his head and kills him. Well, doesn't kill him. He has a servant kill him, but crushes his head nonetheless. And it's like, that's really weird because it looks like for a moment that he's winning. And that's for us. Like when we ask questions like that, why does it look like bad guys sometimes are getting away with it? Why does it look like sometimes that God is causing wicked people to prosper, which we know that happens.
Well, especially in the heat of it too. Like you think 3 years, like what in the world?
Yeah.
Like that's a long time. Like especially if you're living through it.
Yeah.
I mean, could you? I mean, just we obviously we're on the back end of a pandemic, and that time was miserable for
Yeah.
a lot of people. We lost friends and loved ones because of that sickness, and it disrupted the economy. It disrupted our very way of life, and things still haven't fully returned back to
Mm-hmm.
normal because of it.
Yeah.
And that seemed like it was never going to end.
Yeah.
And we're grateful that it did, to where we can be able to congregate and be able to have church services with one another instead of
Yeah.
strictly online and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But even just living through that was like, when is it? We didn't know whenever it was
Yeah.
going to end. We
Yeah.
didn't see the big picture that God had.
But like as you read the scriptures, like we shouldn't be surprised either that God allows wicked people to prosper, because we see it throughout the scriptures as well. Like we see verses that like God allows the sun to shine on the wicked and the just. He allows rain to grow the crops of the wicked and the just. Like we like especially with this story, like Abimelech is being used by God to usher judgment upon Shechem, and at the same time going to allow someone else to and so like it's just the weird thing about the sovereignty of God, how sometimes it looks like and our finiteness causes us only to be able to see people in the moment, but we don't know how it's ultimately going to play out.
Yeah.
Right? Because we have this story and I'm able to read it in one setting, I go, oh, I see what God was doing.
Yeah.
But like we can't see that in the middle of someone else's life.
No, because sometimes we often have the question, like, is God asleep at the wheel?
Yeah, and it's like,
Like-
well, this story is just going to be a lot longer than what you anticipated it to be.
Yeah.
And then the other really like odd part is sometimes God doesn't step in on this side of things.
Yeah.
But the thing that we're able to do is still have hope that ultimate justice will be served, because one day God is going to set all things right.
Yeah.
And all people will stand before God. And so there will be those in this life that it even looks like they've gotten away with it.
Yeah.
Or that, how many millionaires and billionaires do you think are probably scumbags? And you go, why would God let that person prosper this way while really good, godly people struggle?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem to make any sense. And it goes like, listen, these are just not questions that we're ever going to be able to wrestle to the ground. We have principles that we can think about, like that go, hey, the more when you're faithful to God, I believe the scriptures show that God will bless you for that.
Yeah.
But that's not like a hard and fast like guarantee either, because
For
there
sure.
are people that are faithful to God that it just their lives do not go the way that they hope that it does, and then there are people that don't think a single thought about God in a whole lifetime.
Yeah.
That seem to it goes really well for them, and this is also, I mean, some of it is like there's just common grace of like there's just there are benefits to living in a world created by a good and benevolent creator, that there are portions of that are just accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Whether you're a good person or a bad person.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what Abimelech is experiencing here. And I do think that some of it is just the overall sovereignty of God going, I'm going to use Abimelech to do this, and then I'm going to turn around and have them do this. Because we see this actually throughout the rest of the Bible as well. Like, God will use Israel to go in, like book of Joshua, to go in as his instrument of judgment against the Canaanite nations.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why Christians and even Jews would, like, when people push back against, oh, how awful God is for him sending in, his people to overtake. It's like, well, they were being used as an instrument of judgment against very sinful people. And then on the backside of that, then God would then turn around and use ungodly nations to then punish Israel and exercise his judgment against them, which is what we see in the book of Judges.
Yeah.
Over and over, God brings in the Ammonites, the Amalekites, the Midianites to those people thought that they were just doing what was, like, oh, we want to go overtake these people. We're acting selfishly. They didn't even realize that they were in that moment being used as instruments of judgment against, like, and this may mess with some people's like little nice neat compartments. Like, we believe that God can direct His people to do what He wants them to do, and yet sometimes I think we're guilty of thinking that God is so small that He can't get other people that are not faithful to Him to do exactly what He wants them to do. Because one of my favorite things in the Bible, this is one of the things, especially from the Old Testament, that like builds my faith to go like, hey, there's more to this story, there's more to this book than what meets the eye. And the moment that you want to start thinking it's a fairy tale or a fable and things like that, you've got a lot of questions that you have to like answer. Like, God used Cyrus the Great, who was a pagan. He was not Jewish, as the and prophesied. He had someone prophesy that it would be Cyrus that would bring Israel back out of exile.
Yeah.
Wait a second. The person that brought Israel out of exile wasn't a Jew rising up from within them, and no, it was a pagan that God said, "I'll use you, whether you know that this is happening or not. I will use you." And that's like, that really does a number on like your nice, neat little categories of like free will and all these, like, because everybody wants to try to like cram everything down into a systematic theology, and it goes, listen, there's some things that just don't fit into those.
Yeah.
Why God used Cyrus to bring Israel back and showed off a little bit by even prophesying it before it even happened is incredible.
Yeah.
Because it would make sense if like in the book of Judges, someone within Israel was raised up to bring them back. That's not what happens. God raises up a Persian conqueror to be the deliverer of His people.
Yeah.
It's again, it goes, I don't have a spot for that. I don't have nice, neat lines to draw with that. But again, I think it's because some of us, we just don't fully grasp the magnitude of God. Like, like if there is a all good, just, benevolent Creator behind all things, I think that we need to give Him a little bit more credit to go, He can let some people win at times and then use their very victory as the means by which they sort of get what's coming to them.
Yeah.
Right? That, like, when it looks like you're winning, and then it's like, oh, you didn't realize that all those victories got you right into the place that you needed to be for God to finally get your attention with something else that He's trying to do.
Yeah. It's just a good thing to just be reminded that whatever God is doing in any particular situation in our life, we can rest and know that He is still working.
Yeah.
He is not asleep at the wheel, and that ultimately He will always deal with evil.
Yeah.
He will always deal to people who are unjust and unkind, and because that's just who He is. Yes, can it be frustrating in the moment that we're maybe not getting the answers that we want in those moments, or we're not seeing the provision that we want in our time, but we know that God is still going to do those things, and it's in His time. One of the things that I often rely on, that I have to remind myself probably on a weekly basis, is that if I could see what God sees, I wouldn't have all these trust issues. I wouldn't have like these things. But the more and more that I put my faith and I put my trust, and the more and more that God does continue to show up in these areas of my life, the more that my faith grows, the more that my trust in Him grows. And then I can always be reminded of, hey, man, you remember that one time that you were struggling with this, and like both of your cars broke down within like 6 weeks of each other, and it cost $7,000. Like, literally, that's what happened this past January or December or something. I don't know, whenever. It was cold. That's all I remember. It was cold. But God still provided. He still made a way for us to be able to have the money to be able to do those things. Like, it came at the right moment. Like, did we go with one car for a while? Yeah, it did. Yeah. Did I have to hustle and make some things happen? Yes, but I think that He put some things on my mind to say, hey, look, I've got you. Like, here's some ways that you can make this happen, to be able to take care of this bill, to where you can wait until tax return season because we get a lot of child tax credit because we have almost a small school bus full of kids.
Yeah.
But was God looking out? Yes.
Yeah.
Was I freaking out in the middle of all that? 100%.
Yeah.
But he still continued to be faithful
Yeah.
and provide. And whenever I look back on it now, I go, man, I wish I could have just seen the big picture like you did, God. But that's just
That's the
teaching
thing.
me
It's
the
just
reliance on Him.
Exactly. None of us. You remember the movie Bruce Almighty?
Mm-hmm.
Like God lets Bruce be like God essentially
Yeah.
over Buffalo, just over one little area.
Yeah.
And it was so overwhelming trying to manage the affairs of like these prayers coming in that he ended up making a mess of it because it was like, well, if you do this, then this affects this person, and on and on and on like that. And that's like, how in the world could we ever, in our finite mind, come to understand how God is able to oversee the free will decisions as well as the times that He wants to intervene for 8 billion people over all these thousands of years?
Yeah.
Is something that's just not going to make sense to us. And that's why, even though I wouldn't like fault anyone for having questions like, hey, I'm being faithful to God, things aren't going good for me, that person over there's a jerk and like doesn't have anything to do with God, but yet their business is thriving and on and on.
Yeah.
Why is that happening? I go, there's just that may be a valid question like in your heart, but at the same time, if you just step back from it, you go, I think the best answer for that's always going to be I don't know, because throughout the scriptures you see both. You see, people faithful to God, and they prosper. You see people unfaithful, they prosper. You see people faithful to God, stuff doesn't go good for them. You see people unfaithful to God, stuff doesn't go good for them, right? And it's so. But I would say what we see is the principle is it's going to go good for you more times than not to be faithful.
Do you think that sometimes, like during the midst of this, even though that people are doing, like obviously we understand that humans are very complex people, and it's not just like so cut and dry. It's not like just inherently bad people and really, really good people. It fits on that whole spectrum. Do you think that sometimes whenever these things are allowed to pan out, that God's giving a space for people to repent? That maybe that He does see some good in someone, and that maybe He wants to ultimately see redemption from those people, even though, there's so many ways that you can go with this question. You can go into politics, you can go into celebrities, you can go with all these different things, and you're just like, man, I wish that person, we could think so negatively of these people that we're supposed to quote unquote look up to, and we want to see their day come. We want to see this happen because we just don't want to see evil. Do you think that God allows this time to where, obviously if it's not happening in our time, that God is allowing for repentance to come? That He wants to see that redemption arc of their story.
Yeah, I think the Bible bears witness to the patience of God being part of the plan to go. He is patient with people so that way that there is an opportunity for repentance.
Yeah.
But knowing also sometimes he will step in to stop suffering as He sees fit, and sometimes He won't. And again, those are just those questions where you go, I just don't know. I just don't know the answers. It looks like sometimes there's patience, and sometimes it's like, man, it's almost miraculous that something was taken care of so quickly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. A couple things from the story I want to, like, as people have been following along with the story of Judges, we like this focused specifically on Abimelech, but if you look, there's something that happens early on in chapter 9 that tells us again about the state of affairs in Israel. So when Abimelech, he's like working out this deal or whatnot, and he gets 70 pieces of silver. Did you notice where the silver came from?
Mm-mm.
It came from the temple of Baal.
Oh, yeah.
Which meant that for the Israelites, they had completely abandoned Yahweh.
Yeah.
Their gold, their treasury is now being stored in a pagan god's temple. That's how bad things are in Israel.
Yeah.
Which then we look back and we go, well, Well, how's that the case? Because Gideon seemed like such a good judge. Well, again, like I said earlier, all these times throughout Gideon's story, you see all these little seeds of like apostasy, of them intermingling with these other religions and struggling with idols already, that now here in the second generation, now Gideon's son, the culture that they've now created is totally turned over
Yeah.
to idols, which is the whole reason why they're having issues with their neighboring nations anyways.
Yeah.
Because every time they would do this, God would use them as an act of judgment. And so we see it on the small scale with Abimelech, but then we see it on the large scale. Why is all of this happening in the first place? It's because Israel has once again, I mean, Gideon's gone, and now it's like, they've completely turned their back again.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be in need of rescue.
I think that's probably why they were so easily accepting of Abimelech. He was like, "Hey, man, put me in charge." And
well, I was reading commentary on this before, and it was that Jotham is the son that didn't get killed, who kind of stood up on the mountainside, and he told that parable. And I was reading this commentary that was making these points about the parable. I was like, man, this is really, really good. It was talking about, like, there was 3 trees, and all the trees were very useful for things of like serving in different ways. Like they had uses and all of this, and like that parable is actually like showing like the people that want power the most are normally the people that should have it the least. And it was like, these three trees were pictures of people that were adding value to humanity, and they didn't want anything to do with the power position. The thorn bush or the bramble bush is the one that now desires. And the commentary was mentioning this quote that people sometimes say, that sometimes you end up getting the leader that you deserve.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's happening right here.
Yeah.
Is if as a people you have turned your back so much against God, sometimes he's going to give you exactly what it is that you deserve. Yeah. Right? Like if you want to make foolish decisions as a nation, then I will allow you all to put someone over top of you that is not going to be good for you.
Yeah.
And you can take that specifically to Israel, and you can take that to any other nation in the history of the world, that if you want to be unfaithful to God, do not be surprised when people end up in power in those places that you turn around and say, how did the world did that person get in power? It was because sometimes you get exactly what you deserve when it comes to who's in charge of you. Because this is like, whether we like it or not, God is still in charge.
Yeah.
And the decisions that he makes sometimes make sense to us and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
And that was what I got most out of this chapter. Was I still and probably never will understand why or how God does what he does. And at some point in our humanity and in our finiteness, we're going to have to come to terms with that and go,
yeah.
We just did a series here about answering people's questions. And when it comes to stuff like this, there are just some questions that there is not an answer for.
Yeah.
Because I could take you to one scripture to show you one thing. I'd take you to another scripture to show you something different in regards to God's sovereignty. And it's one of those things that I trust the sovereignty of God. I don't understand it whatsoever.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that whenever we see these things that trouble us and we see unjust and we see unkind, I think that if you're going to take away something that's applicable is prayer. Prayer first and foremost needs to be like our response to anything that we see that is troubling us.
Yeah.
Because it shows us that we are going to rely on God.
Mm-hmm.
We pray for those individuals that are being the unkind and the unjust, because we ultimately want them to have an encounter with Jesus.
Yeah.
And it also is a way of us saying, God, I'm giving it to you.
Mhm.
Your hands are obviously going to be way better suited to take care of this problem than anything that I can do.
Yeah.
And through that repetition of continually taking your things that are bothering you, that are troubling you to God, is going to instill this reliance on Him
Yeah.
that I think that if we can all just get a little bit better in that area of our life, so much more of our lives and the lives of the individuals that come around us
Mhm.
will be better because of it.
Yeah.
Especially with our kids, because we want them to learn that they need to rely on God.
Yeah.
You know, like I want them to, just like Luke, whenever he saw what not to do
Yeah.
with eating the spicy chip, I also want him to see what to do whenever he sees how I react in these situations.
Mhm.
And I want him to also learn, like, that Dad relied on God.
Yeah.
He trusted Him, even in the middle of all these different circumstances and everything else that doesn't make sense. And I want him to learn how to act
Yeah.
and how not to react. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and a lot of this is what happened in the 1800s and beyond, with just the Enlightenment period and everything. The way that we now as humanity think is what has brought these questions about.
Yeah.
And humanity has gotten very uncomfortable with mystery, and that's why we still struggle so much with trying to understand. Because we think that we should be able to put God into a nice little box and go, well, this is how God should operate, and then every time that He doesn't, we go like, well, we would rather try to put God on trial rather than just be okay with mystery.
Yeah.
And I think that is a failure of the the way that humanity has decided to go in regards to what we are comfortable with. Like, we're constantly looking for certainty, and that's that. There shouldn't be much, like, we shouldn't think that that's actually rational to think that if there's a good and benevolent creator that is infinite and all powerful behind all things, that we're going to be able to fully understand him and his ways and in his world. And all of this is a very, like, last 200 years of human history sort of hubris and arrogance that goes, oh, we can figure, if we figured out science and we figured out, outer space, like, we'll be able to figure out this God thing. And He goes, listen, at the minute that you can begin to start to figure God out, then He is no longer God.
Yeah.
Right? Like, God is other than absolutely everything else. And so there are things you can know about Him, but you're never going to be able to fully comprehend any of that this side of eternity.
Yeah. Speaking of mystery,
Oh, gosh.
you knew the setup was
I
coming.
opened
You
that.
knew it.
Right.
You knew it. You knew the setup was coming. All right. Speaking of mystery, it is time.
What's your favorite restaurant recently? Because I'd love to go off on that.
Oh, I know. That's all you talked about.
Well, yesterday I was driving to St. Albans to go to the coffee shop to write my sermon for Sunday.
Yeah.
And I had some cash on me from umpiring a baseball game. And I was like, I've got to have lunch. And I have enough to go get that Cajun chicken pasta. But it's not the wise decision to make.
Yeah.
And so I opted for something else. But I was very, like, it's every time I cross into St. Albans, that Cajun chicken pasta at Red Line Diner's on my mind.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with restaurants.
Oh, no.
What would you take with you if tomorrow you were required to evacuate and you only had time to grab 5 items? You can shorten
Evacuate what?
I don't know, just the area, Scott. You have to get out of West Virginia. You only have time to grab 5 things. What are you bringing with you? Because of natural disaster or something.
Where am I going?
Scott, it doesn't matter. You are evacuating. You're going wherever the rest of the traffic is going.
Can I take people?
It says, obviously, we know you're going to take your wife and your kids
So
and
those
your
don't
cats.
count. I'm definitely taking Bert.
The other one you'll leave.
That depends on how much space we have.
5 items.
5 items.
So we know your family. We know your pets are
I'm
going.
going to take my cell phone.
Okay.
That has a lot of stuff on it.
Yeah.
So that takes care of my Bible. I'm not tech savvy as everybody that has to deal with me knows.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I should take Megan's phone instead. She has all the money stuff on her phone where you can like pay with your phone.
Yeah.
I don't have any of that set up. I don't like that.
Scott, we obviously know that you're probably going to have your wallet with you, okay? Like, think outside of the box. This is a mystery meet. Make it fun and exciting.
I don't know how to have fun. That's why I had to leave youth ministry. I'm not fun.
I
would take. I don't see. I want rules. This is what I was just talking about.
There's
What's
no
wrong
rules.
with humanity? I want certainty because I'd like to have a real answer to this if this ever came up, and all the things that I even would begin like as long as I had a means to buy stuff somewhere else, I wouldn't even care what 5 things I brought. I don't know. Probably if I was up at the church and I had to make a split decision, it would be the shoes that are in my office right now and my computer.
Yeah.
But definitely my shoes, definitely my Jordan 11s. Like, even though they're not the expensive Jordan 11s, they are my favorite shoe that I've ever owned, and I would take them anywhere with me.
Yeah.
I don't even like leaving them here overnight. I miss them.
Yeah.
Right? I love those shoes. I also love my Fruity Pebbles, my Dunks in there. So definitely those shoes if I was up here.
Yeah.
If I was at home, I don't know. I don't care really. I don't have a lot of stuff. Like, I'm not one of those people. Like, if I went home today and my house burned down, as long as my cats were out and my family was fine, there's nothing at my house that I'm like sentimental about.
Yeah.
Megan and I are not those types of people. Like, we don't have like pictures of our family that would be like, oh my gosh, these are like we're just not those types of people.
Yeah.
I would just be more irritated at the inconvenience than anything.
Yeah.
So like I'm not sentimental. It's not like, oh, I would take my fill in the blank. I just don't care.
Yeah. I was listening to this. I was listening to Theo Vaughn get interviewed, and he's like, "We're going into the Matrix. What are you bringing?" He's like, I think I would bring some water. And so, like, the interviewer's, like, cracking up. He's like, water? He goes, I don't want to be caught in the Matrix without it. He's like, I don't know if there's any there or not. He's like, what's another thing you bring? He goes, probably bring a toothbrush. Yeah. He's like, could you imagine, though, like, everybody noticing that you're the only person in the Matrix that's got clean teeth?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not good at these mystery meets, and for that, I apologize to everyone that listens to this.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sentimental outside of the shoes that I keep in my office up here.
Yeah.
Which I know that's ridiculous to say. Like, oh, you don't have, like, your son's baby blanket? No, I don't.
No, yeah.
We're just not those types of people. Like, when our kids, like, bring stuff home from school, it's like, oh, that's great. I check the score on it to make sure that they passed them, and then we throw it away.
Yeah.
Like, we don't put stuff on the fridge.
No.
Oh, you made art? That's great. I'm not putting that up. Like, we're just not those people at all. So, yeah.
I think there's only one thing. Erica's asked me something similar to this, like, if you got enough time to just get in the house and grab something. Obviously, I'm going to make sure my dogs are out of the house. But we still have her wedding dress, and it's up in a box up in our closet. I would grab that because Ryan, our daughter, has, like, oh, can I see it? And we've pulled it out for the kids and let them see it. And they've just been kind of intrigued with it. And I think that if there was a possibility, just having the possibility of her being able to wear the same wedding dress that Erica wore, and if that's something that she would even want, at least just having that still available. But, I mean, we've also talked about donating it to where there's a company that makes, like, little baby dresses for, like, infants who are stillborn. Yeah. And they have, like, something really, like, nice to be buried in, essentially. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like a sad thing that people have to deal with it and go through it, but it's a way to be able to just say, hey, we're thinking of you in that moment. So that would be one of them. If I could, I'd probably grab my PlayStation.
Yeah.
But if it's like it depends on the situation. If I'm just being like going to another city, like, okay, you'll get your stuff back or whatever. But if it's like post-apocalyptic type situation, I'm grabbing all my guns. Just Wild West it.
Yeah.
Probably bring some water.
Just
you don't want to be caught in the apocalypse without some water. But
just in case.
Yeah, that one wasn't a good one. That one's a deserve for like dreamer people.
Yeah.
You're not that much of a dreamer.
I'm not at all.
You don't like the what if questions.
I don't, because I want to know all the rules before I lock in.
Just make them up
and
as
then,
you go,
like,
Scott.
part of me is so like rigid in some way that I feel like that then whatever I did say, I would be locked into if this fake scenario ever really did happen.
Time out. So you're meaning to tell me that if something were to happen, you would get home and you would go, oh, dang it, I didn't mention my cats. I can't bring them. And in your mind, you would go,
no,
sorry, Bert.
The opposite way. I would be afraid that in the new place where we were at, someone would be like, hey, you said that you were going to bring your hat. Why don't you have your hat? And I would go,
well, where are the shoes at? You're like, I forgot them. Get out.
And so it would be because I would not want to answer that question, that I would feel very weird about answering the question now for this very, like, not real situation that's not ever going to happen.
Yeah, I tried calling you. I said I was only going to bring my wife's cell phone.
Yeah. Exactly.
She has all the money apps.
I wouldn't want to answer, like, hey, you said that you were going to bring that. Maybe they were counting on me to bring that because of this question right here. And then I just let everyone in the new city down.
Yeah.
I don't want that pressure on me.
Yeah. Just take me, Lord, with the apocalypse. Smite me. All righty. Hey, we thank you so much for listening. This is episode 101. Looking forward to the next 99. This was a good one. Appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for supporting us each and every single time you listen. Share it with someone, and we'll see you next Friday for another episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening in with us today. We really appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. And you can also watch the video version of this on YouTube as well. All you have to do is search up the Pastor's Potluck Podcast. From all of us here, we want to say thank you, and we'll see you next week.